Shalom Aleichem, friends. I want to discuss with you the mitzvah of Tefillin as discussed in the Torah portion. And I want to preface by saying that this is a lesson that's applicable to men and women equally, even though practically women don't lay Tefillin. In fact, it's explained that they don't lay Tefillin because they have, in a sense, a greater natural connection to God, and they don't need the reminder that Tefillin represents, namely, that the mind control the heart, similar to the way men might be on Shabbat and holidays, when men too, like women, don't have to put on tefillin. Because on Shabbat and holidays, they're in a higher level of godly awareness, and they too don't need that reminder that mind should control heart. But coming back to the discussion, nevertheless, this is a discussion relevant to all people, because all of us possess all of Jewishness, even though we may actively be more involved in one versus the other. Similar to the fact that the laws that are relevant to Kohanes and Levites and Jewish kings are things that we all learn about and from. Similarly, the mitzvah of tefillin is something we can all take a lesson from. Now, there's a discussion in Jewish law. We know tefillin is a box that goes on the head next to the eyes, over the brain, between the eyes, and there's another box that goes on the arm next to the heart. And the discussion in Jewish law is, are these two separate mitzvahs or are they one? What's the relevance? Like, who cares? There's a lot of relevance. Relevance number one would be, do you make two blessings? Do you make a blessing when you put it on the arm, or when you and a separate one on the head, or just one blessing for both? And you might know that in Jewish practice, there are various customs. Some make one blessing for both, some make two. Another relevance might be, what if I don't have access to both? You know, as a rabbi, I often visit hospitals, and I cannot access the arm because it's wired up with IV or what have you, and sometimes conversely, the head is unavailable, it's casted up or what have you. Is there value in doing just one or the other or not? If they're one mitzvah, there's no value in doing a half a mitzvah. You know, there's no value, for example, if I only have a lulav and an esrog, I don't have the other two kinds, to shake the mitzvah on just the 2 out of the 4. It doesn't work. You can't have a talus with strings only on 2 out of the 4 corners. It doesn't work. So if tefillin is one giant mitzvah, if I can't do both, there's no point. But if each one is a separate mitzvah, then absolutely I can do the head without the arm and vice versa. Which one is it? So it's discussed that if you look in the Torah, the mitzvah of tefillin is written in 4 places. Twice in Exodus, pretty much one after the other, in the portion of Bo, and twice in Deuteronomy. Not one immediately right after the other, but one in the portion of Et Hanan and one in the portion of Eikev. And we're more familiar with these two because Et Hanan is the section of V'ahavta, which mentions tefillin. And Eikev is the section of V'haya im Shamoah, which mentions tefillin. So we have a total of 4 mentions of tefillin, with small variations between them. And those 4 are divided between Exodus and Deuteronomy. It's a fascinating thing, though, that the 2 commandments, the way they are for tefillin in Exodus, the head and the arm tefillin are written as one mitzvah. When we come to the 2 in Deuteronomy, in both of those cases, the head and the arm tefillin are clearly delineated as 2. This is spelled out in the text. In Exodus, in both cases, it says, let it be a sign on your arm and between your eyes, in one swoop. Whereas in Deuteronomy, the language is bind it on your arm and let it be a sign between your eyes. 2 separate mitzvahs. And the Rabbi explains that this has to do with the level of the generations to which these commandments were given. See, in Exodus, God was speaking to the people who just came out of Egypt, the ones that higher generation. I know we give them a bad rap and we tell them how they're a bunch of kvetches and how they didn't stop complaining. Truth is that this was one of the highest generations ever, maybe the highest generation. They are referred to as Der Dea, a generation of knowledge, not just information. They knew God. How? They saw him with their own eyes, whatever that means. They experienced it. They were very lofty generations. A lot of the bad stuff that took place, A, were imposed by the non-sincere converts who came along, and B, was perhaps because of their lofty level, they couldn't relate to certain things. But the reality is they are seen as a very high level. They're a generation that saw all the miracles and witnessed Sinai. To them, God wasn't a nice idea, it wasn't information, it wasn't hearsay, it wasn't tradition. It was fact. And therefore, to that generation, you follow? The mitzvah of tefillin, the head and the arm, is one mitzvah. Because the concept is that we're supposed to know what's right. We're supposed to meditate on the greatness of Hashem and the truth of life. And then it trickles down to the emotion. And the question is that one fell swoop, or is that going to be a separate battle? If once I know what's right, will I automatically feel the right things? Or is that going to be a separate challenge? The question is for whom? For righteous people who have less of a struggle with the heart and with the Yetzer Hara, with the animal soul, such as that early generation of lofty souls, the generation, the generation that witnessed Sinai. By the way, to see God, you can't see him with your eyes. So clearly they were a lofty generation on a spiritual / intellectual level, and they were able to experience it. In a sense, they were like prophets compared to the rest of the generations. For that generation, it's one commandment. Put it on your head and on your arm. Translation: understand the truth, and automatically the heart will go along with it. You won't have a struggle. Fast forward to the book of Deuteronomy. Moses is now talking to the next generation, which is really the rest of the generations, to whom God isn't real in the sense that it's obvious. They're no longer, if you will, a prophetic generation. They're much closer to what we are like, human beings trying to find truth. And here, as we all know from our own reality, I might know the truth. I might be absolutely convinced that there's a God and there's a purpose and there's a mission. But then bringing that down to this guy down here, to the way I feel, which then triggers my behavior, is a whole new kettle of fish. It's a whole new battle. I might be absolutely sure that there's got to be a God and a mission and a purpose, but I want my sushi. I want what I want, and I want it now. The heart has its own opinion. It doesn't just go along with what the head says is true by most people who, let's call it, are non-tzaddiks, less inspired. So you might say, to sum it up, the first generation who got the Exodus tefillin commandments, they were like in the level of a tzaddik. Once I know what's right, my heart will follow suit. The rest of the generations, which got the tefillin commandment of Deuteronomy, it's like the non-tzaddik, the Beinoni or the Rasha, for those who are familiar with the Tanya discussions. It's two mitzvahs. Try to study Torah and know the truth, but at the same time be prepared for a second battle, for a second mitzvah, to conquer the heart. And don't be frustrated with yourself if even after you knew what's right, you still find it challenging to do what's right. It's okay. It's a door-to-door combat. It's a two-step level. Now, what is the Jewish law? So Jewish law, of course, comes down like Deuteronomy, because Torah was given to us, to the rest of the generations, not just that first prophetic one. Jewish law, therefore, says it's two mitzvahs. And that's why, going back to my example of someone, God forbid, in a hospital, absolutely do one or the other. There are many stories of people in concentration camps who only had one piece of tefillin versus the other, and of course they did it. So it's two mitzvahs. However, we find in Jewish practice that, like I said, while there are some customs that make two mitzvahs, there are other customs, including the Chabad custom, and this is a very prevailing custom, that actually we prefer to make one bracha on both tefillin. If you look into the Chabad Siddur, there's one bracha on both, with the exception of when I interrupted between the arm and the head with outside unrelated speech, that I should go ahead and make the second blessing. But ideally, I should try to make one blessing and stay focused, and that one blessing should be on both. The message here being that while in reality we're on that lower level, where it is a struggle to get the message from what I know here to impact how I feel here, and therefore absolutely it's two mitzvahs. But let's try to link them. Let's try to do both in one fell swoop. Let's try to make one bracha on both. Translation: let's tune in as much as possible through adding in Torah study, filling our minds with truth, which by studying Torah, any areas of Torah, let alone Tanya and Hasidic philosophy and the Rebbe's teaching, our mind starts to think more in line with Torah's truths. And to a great degree, it's not a guarantee, because we're not a tzaddik, that the heart will come along, but it will definitely impact. And on a good day, it will be that way. And therefore, try to line it up. Align yourself for that one mitzvah reality, Try to make it one bracha. Try to align yourself that the light of the truth shines from here and impacts your heart. But on the other hand, be prepared for that occasional battle where even though I know what's right and I'm convinced, when I study Torah, I see it, I get it, that my heart still gives me a run for my money, and I'm willing to take that challenge and go for it.